This video is about the soil profile. Soil is formed from rock that is broken into smaller pieces from the original bedrock. And these smaller pieces are called the parent material because this is what is used to form the soil. This parent material may or may not be related to the bedrock. It could have weathered in place. It also could have been brought in from somewhere else as a result of natural processes. Most of the changes happen at the soil surface, where you have interactions between biological organisms, the sunlight, the air, and water. The changes that happen at the surface gradually move lower and influence the lower layers as water moves through the soil and the roots continue to extend. This washing is called leaching. With leaching, the soluble materials or even suspended materials like really fine clays move from the surface to lower layers of the soil carried by water. This is an important concept to know because there are substances like fertilizers that are very soluble. So if you apply them and irrigate heavily, that may end up washing the nutrients out of the root zone. The development of the soil roughly parallels the surface, and they form layers that are called horizons. I'm drawing them here as being very distinct, but in reality, their characteristics may be distinct, but visually, it might be really hard to tell. There are 5 to 6 main layers or horizons, depending on your source. They're O, A, sometimes E, B, C, and R, which is also bedrock. Starting at the surface, we have the O horizon, which is this narrow section at the top. It's also called the organic layer. It's made of organic matter that's fresh, maybe a freshly dead animal or leaves or wood that's just fallen on the surface, and partially decomposing material. In a human landscape where leaves are constantly blown off the surface, you may not have a O horizon at all. Below that, you have the A horizon. This is also known as the topsoil. The A horizon is mainly mineral, but it's also got a lot of organic matter from the surface, from the O layer, where earthworms and rainfall or watering has pulled that organic matter down. Because of that, the A horizon tends to be darker in color. The quality of the A horizon is important because this is where most of the root growth occurs. And if the water is able to enter the soil and drain and move properly, it really promotes the development of the soil. The next layer down is the E horizon. It's not present in all soils. And the E stands for eluviation, which is a fancy way of saying leaching. This is a layer that does not have organic matter, and it's a zone of heavy leaching. It has a lot of its soluble materials pulled out and moved downwards, and it tends to be lighter in color. Below the E horizon, you have the B horizon, which has a lot less organic matter, but it still has some. You may still also find roots in this zone. This is where all the soluble material from these upper horizons accumulate. The B horizon has changed enough where it's not recognizable compared to the parent material. The horizon below that is the C horizon. It's the least changed and it will be the most similar to the parent material. Lastly, you may hear about the R horizon, which is also called the bedrock. Remember that the parent material may not necessarily have weathered in place. It could have been brought from somewhere else by glaciers, by floods, things like that. So the bedrock and the parent material above it do not necessarily resemble each other. All of these layers together make up the soil profile. As arborists, it's hard to imagine the soil profile outside of looking at photographs. When soil scientists study soil profiles, they dig large soil pits so that there's a fresh vertical face to look at. You can also see soil profiles along roadsides that cut into the hills or during construction when large-scale excavation is happening. In these situations, the profile may not be as distinct if major changes occurred on the site in the past. In urban settings, especially where recent construction happened, You may have limited O and A horizons and sometimes B horizons. These layers have organic matter in them, which makes them less stable because the organic matter triggers changes in the soil. These layers are often stripped away from the site. Unfortunately, they're also the most important horizons for plant growth. It will sound like a broken record, but the most cost-efficient way of restarting the soil development process is to make sure there's plenty of organic matter at the surface, like wood chips, and to not continuously remove leaves and other fallen debris from the site.